Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you all for being with us today. I hope you've been enjoying the summit so far. I certainly have. I have learned a lot, not only from our panelists, but also from all of you, the participants. So really appreciate you all for being vulnerable and participating today. We have an exciting closing. We get to hear from a couple of speakers who identify as caregivers and caregiver allies, and they've done a lot of work in this space to advocate for caregivers. So I'm excited for all of you to hear from them. Before we do that, we have some housekeeping items. Oh my gosh, have I been on mute the whole time? I'm sorry. We're going to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. I'm sure many of you have seen these already, but we just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to access the interpretation services. To access the interpretation services, there's a globe. There will be a globe at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that and then choose the language you prefer. It's not activated right now because we're waiting for the interpreter to join. And as soon as they do, we will let you know so that you can access the interpretation services. And I will turn it over to Carmita to repeat what I said in Spanish, please.
Hi there, thank you, gracias. El servicio de interpretación no está funcionando ahorita porque estamos esperando para las personas que nos van a ayudar. Entonces, en un ratito lo tenemos y cuando comience han de ver las instrucciones. Cuando eso pasa, lo que van a hacer es irse van a hacer el clic en el icono del mundo de la interpretación en debajo, van a ver ese clic y ahí seleccionen su idioma. Gracias.
Great, thank you so much, Carmita. Next slide, please. Now just ask if everyone could take a moment to identify your preferred gender pronouns. And you can do this by clicking on the top right-hand side of your screen, your box. And when you click on that, you'll see a rename option. And then just right behind your name, include your preferred gender pronouns. So it could be she, her, he, his, them, they, however you prefer, we address you. And if you are on a mobile device and unable to rename yourself, please just add your preferred gender pronouns in the chat. For those who would like to use the closed captioning, the feature is also at the bottom of your screen. And that will be live once we have the interpreter, but you would just click on live transcript and then choose show subtitle. And then finally, just another reminder of our practice agreements. Please be present and accountable. We understand that folks are at home and there may be various distractions. We ask that you take care of yourselves and do your best to be as present as possible, and know that we welcome appearances from pets and children. Please be brave and inclusive. Take space and make space. If you find that you're asking a lot of questions and making a lot of comments, which we encourage, but if you find that others aren't getting a chance to share, please just step back and make space for them to do so. And on the other hand, if you haven't shared, we encourage you to speak up because we really want to learn from your experiences and your expertise. And then finally, address racially biased systems and norms, keeping this top of mind in all of our conversations throughout the summit. Thank you. Great, so our first speaker this afternoon is Jamie Harrison, and he is the chair of the Democratic National Committee. He recorded a video for us, which we're excited to hear. He's familiar with caregiving. He was raised by his grandparents, and I won't get into the details of that because he will share his own story with you. He attended Yale University through a scholarship that he earned and attended Georgetown Law. After college, Jamie came back home to Orangeburg to teach at his old high school. Then he worked to help empower disadvantaged kids to attend college. Jamie also served as an aide to the legendary South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn. In 2013, Jamie was elected the first African-American chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, a position he held until 2017, when he was appointed by the DNC chair, Tom Perez, as an associate chair of the DNC. In 2020, Jamie ran for the US Senate from South Carolina, building a national grassroots movement and setting a fundraising record for the most raised by a Senate candidate. Everyone, please welcome Jamie's comments. I'm sorry, just one second, Katie. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Harrison, Chair of the Democratic National Committee. Thank you, health leads, and my dear friend Alex Quinn for inviting me to speak today. I'm honored to be a part of this event. As you know, being a caregiver can be both a blessing and a challenge. You're an essential part of someone's life when they're at their most vulnerable. You provide strength and stability during a chaotic time. And you often have to take on this responsibility without a full picture of the circumstances. I applaud all of the work that each and every one of you do. Your efforts to improve your working conditions benefit everyone. Today, you've discussed ways to create an environment where you can provide the best possible care. I hope you recognize the importance of advocating for yourselves and developing long-term solutions to the challenges you all face. When I was asked to speak today, I immediately thought of my grandfather who helped raise me. He never made it to high school and spent most of his life doing back-breaking work. He struggled with diabetes that went undiagnosed for most of his life, and eventually he had his foot amputated. He was a proud man, but when things got too hard, he had my grandmother and other family members to take care of him. I'll always remember that she never let him get down on himself. She never made him feel like a burden. Being surrounded by love made things easier for both him and my family. I don't think my grandmother would ever describe taking care of him as a job. It was just part of life. It was her calling. I thank you all for accepting your calling because I know how much you mean to your families. Here's the thing. Too many people overlook what you do. And in some cases, you overlook what you do also. And the first step to advocating for yourselves is to recognize your importance. It doesn't matter how long your role has been ignored or undervalued. As soon as you see the importance in yourself, others will follow. When the pandemic hit, the ideal of essential became a topic for debate. What jobs are necessary for the greater good? Do these jobs offer enough reward for the risk? Suddenly, the term frontlines took on a new meaning. And after the initial chorus of thank yous died down, we saw how certain groups spoke up for themselves while others faded into the background. My friends, do not ever stop making your voices heard. If it's one thing I've learned from a career in politics, it's that America works well when America works for everyone. The same is true for healthcare. We need to hear from you. We need to know what you need, and just as importantly, we need to know what you want. Your job as caregivers is hard. There is no doubt about that. It's both physically and emotionally exhausting. But a little self-promotion can sometimes go a long way to getting the affirmation your work deserves. That will also help you identify each other, which leads to the next step in advocacy. Organizing. That's a word we use a lot in my job. Organizing involves bringing people together who already share a connection and empowering them to speak out for their best interests. Sometimes these groups start small and gain momentum, and other times a large group of people just need a connective tissue. Folks, look around today. You don't just have the makings of an organization, you have the beginning of a movement. When you come together and show doctors, health systems, payers, and most definitely policymakers that you are united in favor of a common cause, nothing can stop you. However, you have to be patient. Movements don't create change overnight. Look at what happened in Georgia. Stacey Abrams lost her bid for governor in 2018. Instead of licking her wounds, she got to work. She founded a nonprofit focused on voter suppression and voter registration. She had organizers around the state listening and learning about the needs of various communities. When the time came to bring all of those communities together to vote, not just in November, but again in January for the runoff, she had no trouble connecting with and motivating folks. And the organizers aren't done. They continue to maintain a presence in those communities, and they serve as a resource for people addressing their needs. My friends, the last step to advocacy is to never give up. You have to maintain a consistent presence, and you have to keep working. You have to constantly check in with each other and learn from each other about what keeps you up at night. Take today's spirit of learning and connecting with one another and keep it going for weeks, months, and years to come. You know, the last year has been tough for so many reasons, but frequently we've seen people come together to stand up and speak out for change. Whether it's been for civil rights or voting rights or gun control or climate change, we've seen groups make their voices heard, and we've seen those in power react. My grandfather always used to say to me, "Jamie, don't let anyone tell you that you don't matter. You matter." My friends, I hope you will take those words to heart as you think back on this conference. You matter. During a once-in-a-century global health crisis, you stepped up and proved that you matter. You are strong, you are caring, you are providing dignity and holding families together. If anyone deserves a brighter future, it is you, the caregivers of this great nation. And working together, you can achieve everything you dream of and more. Thank you for having me. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for answering the call to care for others.
Thank you, Chair Harrison, for those inspiring remarks and reminding us of the power of community and organizing, and noting that we have the start of a movement here together. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Ai-jen Poo. I'm excited to introduce her. She has demonstrated the power of caregivers both individually and collectively. Ai-jen Poo is a nationally recognized expert on elder and family care, the future of work, gender equality, immigration, narrative change, and grassroots organizing. She is the executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, director of Caring Across Generations, co-founder of Supermajority, and trustee of the Ford Foundation. In 12 short years, with the help of more than 70 local affiliate organizations and chapters and over 200,000 members, the National Domestic Workers Alliance is working to spread a domestic workers' bill of rights that has already been passed in 9 states and the city of Seattle, and brought over 2 million home care workers under minimum wage protections. In 2011, Ai-jen launched Caring Across Generations to unite American families in a campaign to achieve bold solutions to the nation's crumbling care infrastructure. The campaign has catalyzed groundbreaking policy change in states including the nation's first family caregiving benefit in Hawaii and the first long-term care social insurance fund in Washington state. We are thrilled to have her here with us today. Everyone, please welcome Ai-jen Poo.
Thank you so much. It's really such an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much to Health Leads for gathering us and creating this powerful space. And I wanted to start by recognizing each of you who have tuned in today and asking that you do a little something with me to start. To take a second to think about someone in your life who has cared for you and the value of that relationship in your life. And find somewhere, if you can, to write it down If we were in the same room, I'd ask you to share that story with the person sitting next to you. But we will write down our incredible caregivers' names and take a second to appreciate them. And to all of you caregivers who are joining and watching, I just want to thank you for everything that you do, everything that is visible and all the things that are less visible that you do every day. You make everything else possible in our society with your care, and we're here today to declare and recognize how essential that is for all of us. My own care story is that I was raised in an intergenerational household, an immigrant family, and my grandparents played a really strong role in raising me and my sister. I grew up watching my grandfather do Tai Chi in the driveway every morning. After dinner, we'd watch Wheel of Fortune with him, which was his favorite show. I grew up listening to my grandmother's laughter. She had this amazing belly laugh. She was one of those people who believed that if you laughed really hard 3 times per day, that you would live longer. And I just learned a tremendous amount from her optimism. Now, as they aged, I also learned a lot about elder care. After my grandfather turned 90, his vision started to deteriorate really quickly, and my father couldn't find appropriate home care for him. So we had to place him in a nursing home against his wishes. And I will never forget visiting him there. It was a frightening place, sharing rooms with 5 or 6 people, overwhelmed and overworked direct care workers. The food was unrecognizable. The lights didn't even work properly. There was this fluorescent light that was flickering in my grandfather's room. And he very quickly became a shell of the person he was, which was really hard for me to see as someone who held him in such high regard as a real hero. And he passed away within just a few months of arriving there. My grandmother, on the other hand, had the support of home care workers and also of my mother, who became her full-time caregiver. And for the time up until she had a stroke, she was attending church, playing mahjong, watching pro basketball, getting her hair permed, probably more regularly than she needed. But she was living life on her own terms. Or as Atul Gawande would say, she was the author of her own story, even as she became more frail and needed more support, because she had that support from professional home care workers and from my mother as a family caregiver. This tale of 2 care stories is why I'm here today. The difference between the experience of my grandfather and the experience of my grandmother, night and day. And the reality is we got lucky with my grandmother, and that the reality for us as a country is that we don't actually have the infrastructure in place to support us, to care for the people that we love, the people who raised us. And what we have is an over-reliance on isolated caregivers who are overstretched, both family members and care workers, who are too often invisible and unsupported. When it comes to the workforce, they're also shockingly underpaid. So much so that the workforce that we are counting on to take care of us and the people that we love can't take care of themselves or their own families working in this profession. And in fact, we lose some of our most dedicated care workers to other low-wage service professions like fast food or retail, because they simply cannot make ends meet. They can't survive on the incomes they earn as home care workers. And so about a decade ago, my colleague Sarita Gupta, who is a family caregiver for her father with Alzheimer's, and I launched a campaign called Caring Across Generations to bring all of us together to change the way that we value care and caregiving in our country. As a nation that is aging and where we need more care than ever before, we actually need a whole new care infrastructure to support us to live well across the lifespan, including caring for our caregivers. And I will say that the last 10 years has been a bit of an uphill battle. As you can imagine, for most of this period, most of us thought about care as a personal burden or a responsibility. And our culture is just that if we can't figure out how to afford or manage care for somebody that we love, we consider it a personal failure, like we did something wrong. We didn't save, or we don't have the right job, or we're a bad daughter. But at the end of the day, it is actually so much bigger than that. And that idea that's so deeply rooted in our culture, I just wasn't sure would change to allow us to find collective solutions that we so desperately needed. But then we found ourselves in an unprecedented pandemic. And suddenly our children were home from school and daycare, and our parents were on lockdown in nursing homes or isolated thousands of miles away from us. And millions of us had to make impossible choices about how to manage care and work in this new environment. And it became so unbearable that millions of us got pushed out of the workforce, especially women and women of color, all due to caregiving challenges. And we realized collectively as a country, this is crazy. And it is not our fault. That we need collective solutions and public policy and programs. We need an infrastructure to support our ability to care for the ones that we love, especially while we're working. Life does not pause, no matter what crisis we're in. Now, fortunately, we not only have real champions in Congress these days, we also have an administration that has heard our cries and responded to our advocacy. The president understands the challenges that we face as caregivers from personal experience. Having been a single parent and as a caregiver for his own parents before they passed, also the vice president has declared a national emergency for women in our economy due to the unique pressures on women and caregivers. They have made care a priority in our economic recovery. President Joe Biden announced the American Jobs Plan, a plan that includes a $400 billion historic investment in home and community-based care through the Medicaid program to increase our access to care and services for older people and people with disabilities, and to improve wages and conditions for the care workforce, to make care jobs good jobs. This plan is a game changer for 3 reasons. First, for the care workers who've been excluded from labor laws and protections since the New Deal because of racism, who are still overwhelmingly women and majority women of color, whose job it is to ensure our loved ones with disabilities can live independently with agency, to ensure a dignified quality of life for our aging parents and loved ones. For these workers to have livable wages and benefits is a game changer for those workers and their families, so they can finally have economic security doing this work. The second is for the working family caregivers. There are more than 42 million of us who work full-time and spend a lot of time on top of that caring for our aging loved ones and loved ones with disabilities. Having access to these services gives us more agency and the ability to work if we choose to do so. This is particularly essential given how many women caregivers have been forced to give up their livelihoods in the pandemic due to caregiving responsibilities. And finally, for the people we love, older people, people with disabilities, to have the dignity and supports these services offer, to be able to live at home and connected to our families, to our communities. It's about quality of life. It's about health outcomes. It's about agency. It's about the basic human rights of people with disabilities. It is so, so essential, huge. And in addition to these plans to invest in home and community-based services as part of the American Jobs Plan, President Biden has also announced his American Families Plan to increase access to childcare and to paid family and medical leave. Raise your hand if you need that as a family caregiver. He has plans to invest in all three pillars of a strong care economy. And we are a part of a coalition called Care Can't Wait that brings together childcare advocates with paid leave advocates and long-term care advocates to all push together to move these plans forward and ensure that care is at the center of our economic recovery. Now, these plans are in the hands of Congress to ensure that care agenda moves forward, and they need to hear from us. Every single one of us who are directly affected and will be directly affected, we need to have our voices heard. Now is our time to build the care infrastructure we need and deserve in this country. Rosalind Carter once said that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: people who are caregivers and people who will be caregivers, people who need care and people who will need care. And the reality is we all provide and rely on care. And our failure to value caregiving has kept us from fully seeing and valuing ourselves and each other. Now is our time to be seen, to own our value and our roles as caregivers, and most importantly, to assert what we need. This is the moment we've been waiting for, the moment I wasn't sure was ever going to come, but it is the moment to build the care infrastructure in this country that we deserve, and to create a culture that values care once and for all. It's really, truly up to us in this moment in history to take action, and with our actions and our advocacy to build the solutions that we need. And I know I for sure cannot wait to see what our movement will achieve together. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ijen, for, again, reminding us of the power of the collective, for giving us hope with the, sorry, I'm having tech issues here, sorry, for giving us hope with what's to come with the Biden plan and the organizing that's happening right now for all caregivers. Our next speaker is, or our next presenter is Adriana Adele, which you all have seen throughout the summit today. Adriana has reminded us of the power and the importance of mindfulness, and I will say self-sustenance now, based on our last session about quality of life for caregivers. And we're happy to invite her here today so that we can continue to exercise our mindfulness and providing the fuel we need for ourselves. So with no longer ado, I'll turn it over to you, Adriana.
Thank you so much, Taiji, and thank you, Ijen, for that amazing speech or talk that you just gave. I don't know about anyone else, but I definitely would love to just take a deep breath and take that all in. Thank you all, and thank you so much for having me here at the National Caregiver Summit, And thank you to the organizers of the summit for seeing the importance of mindfulness, self-sustainability, and these little practices of care that we can offer ourselves throughout our days. Like I said at the beginning, at the top, you know, a little bit of breath work, a little bit of yoga isn't going to be the thing that gives care to your person or that changes policy all on its own. But these little practices of checking in with ourselves, pausing, slowing down, and just taking a moment to breathe and check in can offer us the ability to respond with our values, to respond with care in the moments where it seems most difficult. So with that, I'd love everyone to just take a moment to move in no particular way. Maybe it's something you learned at the lunchtime session, or maybe you're just moving in the way that your body wants to move, maybe letting your neck roll side to side, letting your shoulders move to the forward and the back. Just take one moment to move in a way that feels good. And before we settle in for the final meditation of the day, we'll have a moment of reflection. And this moment of reflection will be on a word cloud that is filled with different descriptors of what it means to be a caregiver and what it means to caregive, to give care. And as that's making its way up onto the screen, you can take a moment once it pops up to just take a look at all of the words, all of the descriptors about what it means to be a caregiver, what it means to give care. And what I appreciate most about this word cloud is that it paints a fuller picture, a wholer picture of what caregiving is. It doesn't gloss over the challenging or exhausting or stressful parts. It doesn't bypass that, but rather recognizes that. And as we recognize that, we are able to offer ourselves, or yourselves really, more care. And there are parts of this that are to be celebrated: the love, the compassion, the connection. So as you let your eyes move over the screen, maybe just remember or notice a couple words that feel particularly resonant with you. And then we'll start to move into a little meditation. We'll start off with some breath awareness. We'll take a moment to just be, to do nothing for 1 minute. I think that is a valuable way to care for yourself, to just pause. And then we'll create a little intention setting. I know we did some at the beginning, but we'll do a little more, creating intentions for ourselves and for our collective, for our community. So maybe you start to notice the way you're sitting. Notice if there's any way you could be a little more comfortable in your seat. And if there are any extra or last movements that are moving through you that need to move, let yourself move accordingly. And let those movements start to settle towards a place of stillness. Know that you don't need to close your eyes to meditate. You could keep your eyes softly open or softly closed, whatever works for you. And simply start to notice that you're breathing. Like we did at the very start of our first meditation today. Know that there's no need to try and change or shift your breath. Rather, just take a moment to notice what it feels like to be you breathing here and now. Maybe you notice some of the qualities of your breath, like the length of the breath in, or the length of the breath out. Or maybe you notice what moves as you receive the next inhalation in, and what moves as you release the next exhalation out. Maybe you notice if there's a sound to your breath, or even a texture to your breath, or a tone. Just begin to notice it all, the fullness, the wholeness of your breath. I like to think of the breath as something that reminds us that we are always in connection with the world around us, with each other. And the fact is that our breath is always in the present moment, in the here and now. So if you ever need to come back to that moment and the breath is a good access point for you, you can just turn your awareness to your breath. And maybe you've noticed that by turning your awareness to your breath itself starts to shift. That reminder that our energy and our care can go towards where our awareness naturally flows or where we draw our awareness to. And then just take 1 minute to just be here in your breath. Maybe eyes softly open or closed. Just take 1 minute to do nothing. Just 1 minute to simply be. And then slowly start to turn your palms face up in your lap or on your thighs or wherever they are. And start to draw your awareness to your left hand. Really feel the skin on the left hand, the air on the skin. Maybe you even rub your fingertips or your thumb against your fingertips to just feel that connection to yourself. And if you're in your left hand, as if you were planting or seeding something of value, let your left hand get a little bit heavier. And in your left hand, I invite you to start to plant the seed of an intention of something that you would like to grow for yourself, just for you. Maybe it's something that resonated with you here at the Caregiver Summit. Maybe it's more space or more practice of self-sustainability or something else I haven't named, but just take a moment and plant a seed of an intention for yourself, for just you in your left hand. And then start to turn your right palm up if it's not already. And draw your awareness to your right palm, to your right hand. Feel the air on the skin of the right hand. Maybe move your fingertips, thumb across the fingertips to just feel that connection of the right hand. And in your right hand, as if you were planting or seeding something precious, something you care for, let your right hand get a little bit heavier. And in your right hand, I invite you to place the seed of an intention of something that you would like to grow for your community, for this community, for this collective of caregivers. Maybe it is more connection. Maybe it is advocacy and change, but plant that intention for the collective in your right hand. And then start to feel and draw your awareness to both hands. Feeling both of these intentions. The one for yourself, just yourself in the left hand. The one for the collective, your collective on the right hand. Take an inhale through your nose. And as you exhale, start to place your right hand over your left hand as if you were bringing these two intentions together. These two seeds that you want to grow and nurture and care for yourself and for the collective. Give yourself a moment to sense that reciprocal nature between caring for yourself that allows you to care for others, and how caring for others means that you get to receive care yourself. So to take your palms together in front of you, and like we've done a couple times today, just start to rub your hands back and forth, feeling a little warmth, a little heat rising in between your hands. Take an inhale through your nose. And as you exhale, place your warm hands anywhere on your body that you'd like to receive your own caring energy. Maybe over the heart, the eyes, the belly, or somewhere else. And just take a moment to receive your own care. Start to massage your fingers into that part of your body, gently reawakening. Take a moment to feel the ground or the support beneath you, knowing that you are always supported by the earth, the place where we are all interconnected. Start to feel the air that's all around you. Start to sense the room that you're in just outside of your body. And as you slowly begin to blink open your eyes, let the light in your space and the light of all of the other caregivers and caregiver allies come back to you. Thank you again. It has been an honor and such a joy to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. I know I feel much more relaxed and energized now, and I hope all of you do too. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to our organizers of today's event to share a few closing remarks. And beginning with Allison Gray from the Lucille Packard Foundation for Children's Health.
Thank you so much, Taiji. I'll just start by saying this has been such an inspirational and informative and emotional day for me today. When wearing my caregiver hat, I'm the mother of a child who has special healthcare needs and the daughter of a parent whom I recently lost to Alzheimer's related complications. And in my day job, I'm the Senior Program Officer at the Lucille Packard Foundation for Children's Health. And I lead our work in family engagement and family-centered care. Before I share a little bit about our work and why we as a foundation are interested in caregiving, I first want to thank you, Taiji, and the whole amazing team of summit organizers at Health Leads. It's been such a pleasure working with you all. And Nirav Shah as well at Stanford's Clinical Excellence Research Center. And also want to recognize Holly Henry, our foundation's program director, all of you for your partnership in laying the groundwork for today's summit. At the foundation, Lucille Packard Foundation for Children's Health, our programmatic goals focus on improving the systems of care serving children with special health care needs and their families. These systems, as many of you know, and what I heard a lot about today, they're fragmented, they're complex, and we know that parents, family caregivers bear the majority of responsibility from navigating these systems to coordinating their child's care and providing home health care as well. For parents of children with special health care needs, that responsibility typically begins at birth and continues through transition age into adulthood. We know that many family caregivers reduce their work hours, some leave the workforce altogether. Financial hardship and decline in emotional and physical well-being are common. For our foundation's Children with Special Healthcare Needs programmatic work, our interests in caregiving lie in understanding the lived experience of families of children with special healthcare needs. We know that when families are engaged in the development of policies, equity initiatives, or care innovations, all of these areas discussed in today's sessions, it's more likely that the systems and services will better meet the needs of the child and the family. Ultimately, reducing the weight on families and improving the health and well-being of both the child and the family. When we first began developing the framework for the summit, we quickly came to a consensus that listening to caregivers, all types of caregivers of diverse backgrounds and experiences, was core to our planning process. And I want to close by thanking all of the design team members in the three tracks today, and especially the caregivers for helping to make today's summit a success. I have learned so much from all of you throughout the planning process and from all of the caregivers today as well. We heard you, we hear you, and really look forward to continuing this work together. And I will pass it back to you, Taiji.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison. And I'm sorry to hear about your mother too. And I will pass it to Nirav from Stanford Medicine. Okay, yep, there you go.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Nirav Shah. I'm the faculty here at Stanford University and Chief Medical Officer of ShareCare. Our work at Stanford focuses on lowering the cost of great care. And we realize that much of what passes for value-based care is really about cost shifting to unpaid family caregivers. And from volunteers and paid folks to the voluntold and people who didn't necessarily choose their fate. To the extent that we need to fix that, we can do that from multiple perspectives. That's my job, and that's my role at Stanford. I'm going to borrow some words from caregivers featured in this morning's opening and say that this has been a rewarding, exhausting, and yet fulfilling day. My brief message is one of gratitude. Thank you to the care advocates who all helped make this event happen. Thank you to the innovators and leaders who are building the solutions. And thank you to every caregiver in the audience for all you do. Today has been a day of good hope that speaks to the conscience, a day of devotion to all that's best in humanity, compassion, care, generosity, humility, empathy, patience, diligence, and wisdom. Each of us has chosen to live a life of service, with the goal not being perfection, but to make today better than yesterday. Thank you for making today great and the possibilities for making tomorrow even better. I'll turn it back to you, Taiji.
Thank you, Nirav. That was all so well said. Over the years, Health Leads has recruited, trained, and co-designed with caregivers. This includes high school students, college students, promotoras, community health workers, doulas, and families. And in doing this work, the inequities and barriers endured by all caregivers were obvious. The strengths and the expertise were also undeniable. We have always focused on the essential resources that impact our health, and our approach has evolved over the years, always with the goal of supporting healthier communities. We recognize that improving the sustainability of all caregivers and being led by the expertise of caregivers is an essential part of achieving health and dignity and equity. That's what we focused on together throughout today. And there's so many who have made this day possible. So many, so many. I'll start with the Lucille Packard Children's Foundation for Children's Health. Working closely with Allison and Holly has been such a pleasure. We appreciate you for not only helping to fund the summit, but also being thought partners. I mean, we're really like shoulder to shoulder in planning this event. And as Alex noted in the chat, apparently this was your idea initially, Allison. And so I thank you for having that vision. Narav has also been a part of that team, shoulder to shoulder. And it's been interesting to hear the different perspectives and learn from one another as we've taken this journey. There are so many to thank on the Health Leads team, so much work happening behind the scenes that has made this day possible. I won't name everyone because there are many and I don't want to miss anyone. But please know how much I appreciate each of you, how much I've enjoyed taking this journey with all of you, and how proud I am to call each of you colleagues. A huge thank you to the design team for taking Allison's original vision and molding it and making sure that it's something that caregivers would appreciate, that will be helpful to caregivers, and for the caregiver allies who participated as well. And as Allison mentioned earlier, I echo that. I have learned so much from each of you throughout this process, and I've also felt loved, and you all have poured into me, and I appreciate the community that we've been able to build. And finally, I'll say I'm excited about the new community, the extension or the extended community we've built today, and continuing our work together. So a little more detail on the next steps. There's a survey that was shared over the last break. We ask that you take a moment to complete that survey, and we'll also send the survey after the summit for anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to complete it. And with that survey, we're looking to get input from the audience. We want you all to guide what and how we pursue the next steps while we have this collective and the energy and momentum that we have, the movement that we're about to start. So being thoughtful about how we approach that, we want to make sure that you all are guiding those decisions. We're going to take the survey results, synthesize them, and compile the learnings. And then we will be in touch to let everyone know what came out of the summit. So please keep your eye on your inboxes and look forward to a message from us on the next steps. And finally, we have a wind down session for those of you who would like to. It's an informal environment, just an opportunity to debrief the day, continue conversations that you may have started throughout the summit today. So if you're able and you would like to join us, we would love to have you. So for now, please take a moment. We have about 5 minutes. Take a moment, grab water or whatever you need to do to take care of yourselves, and we'll see you back for the wind down session. For those of you who won't be there, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you so much for participating today.